Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on the cold spell that is arriving overnight tonight into tomorrow, as we do see Arctic air plunging in from the north. Now, in our last update on Tuesday, we were fairly sure that we're going to be seeing cold air towards the end of this week, potentially even into the start of next week, with some wintry showers, but the main risk being frost and generally cold conditions. Now, the last update was on Tuesday, and in that time, the last 48 hours, things have really ramped up in that medium to longer range, as it is looking pretty likely now that we see a sustained cold spell through the end of November and start of December, and an increased risk of wintriness as we progress into the last couple of days of November and the first week or so of December. We're seeing lots of chopping and changing from the models, but the most likely scenario at this stage, or what most of the models are showing, is easterly winds going to dominate as we head into the early to middle part of next working week. And then the risk as we progress towards next weekend, in around the 7 to 14 day time frame, we see lower pressure trying to come up from the south or southwest, bringing not only milder air but also bringing weather fronts, moisture and precipitation. Exactly how those models have sort of resolved those areas of low pressure, where they go, how strong the block is to our north, will all decide whether we see snowfall or whether we see milder air moving in, potentially snow in the north, mild in the south. It is all to play for, but definitely the risk of cold and wintry weather has substantially increased since our last update as we do progress towards the end of November and early December. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. Now, starts on the live radar, we'll then have a look at the latest from the UKV, as that does stretch out into the early part of next week. Not looking at anything wintriness, any wintriness at this stage, a few snow showers over the next sort of 48 hours or so, but mostly just very cold temperatures, and daytime temperatures really not getting much above the low to mid single digits in most areas. But it's the longer range where the risk of widespread cold and potentially even severe cold could become established, and of course an increased chance of snowfall as weather fronts and moisture moves in. Now, it is going to be looking likely now, this is going to be the third consecutive year we've seen a late autumn, early winter cold snap. So it's becoming a bit of a recurring theme here, and I don't think this is going to play out exactly the same as 2021 or even 2022. 2021 was very wintry, especially with Storm Arwen, which we saw red warnings for, and we saw widespread snow. 2022 had very cold conditions, some of the coldest sustained weather we've had. I think it's the coldest since December 2010, but we only saw wintriness in localised areas, the southeast, for example, and further northwards, but many areas were just dry but very cold. This year is looking this cold spell that hasn't arrived yet, fully arrived, but is what the models are showing at the moment could be a bit of a mix. It could be very cold but also wintry, which does make a very interesting next couple of weeks. We are going to be seeing lots of chopping and changing, but as you can see on the live radar at the moment, the cold air is moving in. That is guaranteed. Now, we're going to be seeing at least a few days now of very cold weather. Showers moving southwards, the weather front, which is bringing the cold air across parts of the Midlands. Now, you can see this patchy rain is actually among some thicker cloud, and that's what's bringing the cold air in. Further northwards, showers coming in as we do see that Arctic air mass. The proper cold air still hasn't fully arrived yet, but you can see more and more of these showers are turning to snow inland, especially over the higher ground. Now, over the next few days, we're not expecting anything extreme. Of course, we're looking at some snow over the tops of the mountains and over some hills, maybe even to temperatures sort of 100 to 300 metres above sea level. So nothing too unusual, but it is going to be very cold as that high pressure topples, and we see that cold air getting trapped over the top of us. Now, if we do have a look at the 2 metre temperatures as of around 7:30, you can see that's still pretty mild across the Midlands southwards. So if you are in these areas, you'd think, what cold spell? It is only a couple hundred miles to our north, because of course Scotland now temperatures are falling away quite substantially. We're going to see a widespread frost here, and most areas are going to be seeing a widespread frost tomorrow night, so Friday into Saturday, as those very cold conditions do establish themselves. Now, we can see that on the latest UKV at the moment. You can see the weather front spreading southwards, bringing cold but relatively dry air for all into tomorrow, and there could be some snow showers continuing across Scotland, and most of these showers, as I said, are falling as snow further inland. by tomorrow morning. But you can see the showers do slowly get cut off as the high pressure starts to topple in and showers stay more out to the North Sea. So we're not looking at widespread wind shearers at all. Some isolated snow showers as expected from a northerly wind across northern Scotland, maybe inland Scotland, maybe the far east coast of England in a few odd places. But it's generally going to be pretty dry, pretty sunny, but turning very cold. Through Friday night into Saturday, those temperatures are going to widely drop below freezing. It's going to be a real frigid night. Pretty hard frost is looking expected, especially further northwards. Maybe not so further southwards at this stage, simply because we still have got some milder air lingering at the surface. But Saturday night, we're going to be seeing first proper hard frost of the season for all. Into Saturday, temperatures still pretty cold and fairly dry. It'll be a fairly pleasant day. If you wrap up warm, go outside, it'll be actually pretty beautiful. But temperatures maybe 5 or 6 degrees at best. That doesn't even add on the wind chill, especially that wind chill further northwards and eastwards is going to be make those temperatures feel more like freezing. As we head through Saturday night into Sunday, you can start to see a weather front approach from the west. And what we're seeing here is low pressure approaching from the Atlantic, trying to break through. But interestingly, watch the positioning of these weather fronts. They will slide eastwards and then pull southwards. That's because the high pressure to our north is pushing upwards and drawing an easterly wind in, pushing that rain, precipitation and milder air back down towards France and towards our south. So watch this very closely here. Sunday will still be a fairly chilly day, but milder air will come in with this weather front temporarily. I must say, it will be turning milder, especially for the south, for about 24 hours or so, maybe slightly longer. But you see that rain slowly moving southwards, even a bit of snow over the higher ground of northern England there. But eventually, look at it, it pulls southwards, and then we start to see the wind veering from the east once again. You can see this from the mean sea level pressure. You see the isobars are very stretched out, but it is generally coming in from the east now, and we would expect to see that air starting to cool down significantly. Look at that. So you can already see the cold pool to our east is getting deeper. So you see that milder air coming in, and then the wind veering back in from the east, and you can see that cold air drifting back in, and it will start to turn us very cold once again. And as I said, as we head towards the latter part of next week into the weekend, milder air is going to take another go at pushing in, and that's where we could see some potential widespread precipitation that could, as I said, fall as snow. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see overnight tonight widespread frost in the north, but really it is going to be the temperatures tomorrow afternoon that's going to be the first real introduction to this cold spell for all. Look at that for northern and eastern areas, 5 or 6 degrees at best, if not colder than that. Further southwards and westwards, maybe 8 or 9, but starting to feel a lot colder with that wind chill pushing in. Overnight to Friday into Saturday, you can see pretty widespread frost appearing. Might not be complete widespread further southwards, so we still have a set layer of milder air, but still actually pretty widely down towards 0, or sort of 1 or 2 degrees either side. As we head into Saturday afternoon, it is going to be cold, higher ground of northern England, Scotland, not getting above freezing. Many lowland areas elsewhere, we're looking at 3 to 6 degrees at best. And that doesn't even take into account sort of the wind chill, which will make it, as I said, feel close towards freezing for northern and eastern areas. As we progress into Saturday night into Sunday, widespread hard frost developing quite widely. Again, could get slightly milder further westwards as that rain starts to move in. But yeah, really hard frost for most areas, down towards -1 or -2 at least. Sunday afternoon, still cold further north and eastwards, hardly getting above freezing in Scotland, 4 or 5 degrees elsewhere. But that milder air is moving in, and you can see into Monday, frost in the north, but elsewhere, temperatures holding up. And by Monday afternoon, again, could see 6 or 7 degrees. So milder wedge does come in, but it can actually coincide with nighttime temperatures, so we don't see anything too mild. And then as we head into Monday and Tuesday, still very cold overnight, and Tuesday afternoon, look at that, the very cold air returns, and for much of England, Wales and Scotland, as that air does come back in, 3 to 5 degrees at best, making it feel really quite cold indeed. Now, of course, these temperatures won't be quite cold enough to see widespread snow, definitely falling snow, not widespread snow, as that would require the air to get slightly colder and for it to descend a little bit more. Because remember, we've had about 8 months really now, about 7 to 8 months of temperatures well above freezing. You know, most of the summer it's 25 degrees in the south, if not hotter, so the ground's still very warm, and all that heat has to dissipate away. It will do very quickly after a few nights, a few very cold nights, and a couple of weeks of generally cool weather. But it still does hold those temperatures up slightly higher. The same sort of air mass in sort of late December or early January would have the temperatures probably only 2 or 3 degrees instead of maybe 5 or 6 here. And as I said, that's all due to just the time of year and the ground temperatures. So all these little things are going to become a factor. But traditionally, when we see a cold spell like this, where the air drifts in from the east, the models do sometimes overdo the temperatures a little bit, and they can actually be progressively colder as the air does cool down, and we do see the very cold conditions prevail. Now, of course, this is the next 5 days, where, as I said, it's looking very cold and dry, but what is going to be happening beyond that? Now, this is the latest GFS, which does put a bit of a spanner in the works this evening, as it does develop a pretty severe low-pressure system in the longer term, which would produce snow in places, probably further northwards, but regardless, would be a very interesting system nonetheless. Now, you can see the northerly wind arriving. Now, this is the point where we were all in agreement on Tuesday with high pressure sort of toppling, but this is what has really started to come from the models. High pressure building northwards, and look at that, an easterly wind pushing in. Now, the last few runs have been a bit more bullish with that high pressure, so slightly stronger on the 6 o'clock run than the midday run, so pulled back a little bit there, but only slight deviations. And you can see the wind, as I said, veering in from the east, telling us very cold. By this stage, cold air is established, but as I said, as we head towards the latter parts of next week, look at this. Low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, pushing into cold air. Now here, the low pressure is a lot more advanced than the previous runs, and it does really only produce snowfall further northwards, but cold rain for elsewhere, and then eventually it pulls away and brings more colder air back in. So we keep the -5 near enough over the top of us or in and around us all the way until the first week of December. As we'll see from the ensembles in a minute, majority ensembles don't have that low as progressive or as developed. Beyond that, the cold air does remain, and it does continue to dominate, but higher pressure toppling over, so it would turn drier inevitably in the longer term. So you can see it is very cold from this latest GFS one. The upper air temperatures don't quite do it justice. So as I said a couple of minutes ago, when we get a week or two of very cold air aloft at the surface, those temperatures will progressively descend. The same sort of air mass that would give 5 or 6 degrees on Saturday probably give 1 or 2 degrees in a week or two's time. That's what happens when we see progressive patterns, and we sort of see the compound effects of that cold air high up in the atmosphere. So you can see, as I said, sustained colder weather with the risk of snowfall into early December. Again, I won't look at these low pressure systems in too much detail, as if you are very interested in looking at that, you can look at all the runs of the past 24 hours, and you can see every single run keeps chopping and changing the positioning and intensities of these lows. Almost impossible to say exactly how it will evolve, or even have a good guess at exactly how it will evolve. All we can say is cold air is coming in from the east, and low pressure is trying to bump into it. If we do have a look at the GM now, again, northerly wind pushing in, and it again turns progressively colder. The low pushes away to our south, the easterly winds arrive, and it does turn cold. And as we head beyond that, low pressure tries to push in from the Atlantic. We see low pressure coming in from the north as well, and it's this whole jumbled pattern where we've got low pressure and cold air mixing, and again, there could be increased snowfall around with this. The block to our north is still trying to hold that cold air over the top of us, but you can see how messy this scenario is. The -5 line's in, then very warm air moves in, then cold air returns, all making a very snowy pattern in places, but also very up and down pattern. This is sort of weather where it could be 2 degrees in London one day, 10 degrees the next day, and 2 degrees and snowing the day after that. And again, all to do with, a couple 100-mile adjustments in those upper air temperatures. So there is, as I said, a lot to be determined here, but it is similar to the GFS in terms of cold air moving in, getting pretty established, and then low pressure trying to push it away. If you now have a look at the ECMWF that's only just come out, again the northerly wind coming in, bringing cold air, the high pressure extending northwards, and we see those easterly winds arrive. So it's potentially the coldest easterly winds are going to be early next working week, and then eventually the high pressures disconnect, and we see low pressure coming back in off the Atlantic here, and you can see the low pressure riding to our south, but again, very subtle shifts bring turn this low pretty intense. And although it's a very blocked pattern, we actually do see a lot more milder air move in. Again, a couple hundred miles further eastwards, that milder air is off into Europe, and we're dragging in this very cold air once again. It's even more impressive if we have a look at the temperature deviations, which unfortunately we can't do. It's not loaded here. But if we could, you'd be able to see that there is a very, very strong temperature gradient. We're going from plus 10 degrees at Adrift VHP here to minus 5 or even minus 10 across Scandinavia. So a 15 to 20 degree temperature gradient, which produces a lot of rainfall, or a lot of precipitation, which, as I said, could fall as snow, especially further northwards. Now, if we do look at the ensembles are much less bullish in bringing in those low pressure systems. They're much more in agreement with keeping the easterly winds coming in. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, maybe they're just not quite got the high resolution to sort of resolve these areas of low pressure. Or two, potentially the operational runs this evening are going a little bit wacky, which they can do when we have got sort of colder spells coming up and we do see unusual patterns. As you can see here, turning very cold for a couple of days. Brief milder bump for London as we see that rain move in on Sunday, and then it turns much colder early next week. And look at the consistency. For about a week to 10 days, we're around the -5 line for most of the ensembles. There is that bump around early December, coinciding with higher precipitation, which is where we could see significant snow risk. The operational run brings us back towards average, and that, as said, would bring probably just generally rain for us, sort of 5 or 6 degrees, and cold rain. But as I said, most of the ensemble members actually keep us very cold. So again, who knows what the operational run's seeing that the ensembles are not seeing, and vice versa. But just looking at this on face value, it is very cold run. Quite a few precipitation spikes giving the indication that there is substantial risk that we do see some sort of snow, even in the south as we progress into early December. Now, the 2 metre temperatures are very cold indeed. 5 or 6 degrees this weekend, then bump up to maybe 7 or 8 by Monday, but by Tuesday on onwards, look at that, temperatures progressively cooling, and these include milder outliers that are up to 10 degrees. The majority of runs here are around that 2 to 4 degree mark, and as I said, progressively getting colder. And yes, it is above freezing technically, but we still could, as I said, see lots of falling snow if we did see precipitation within this. And of course, the overnight temperatures are never done correctly by the ensemble members, as they always do overdo it and don't take into account the radiation that we do see. So of course, the overnight temperatures will be widely well below freezing in this scenario. Dew point is another indicator of the air mass. Look at that, around freezing or below freezing for the foreseeable future, apart from right now, and a brief bump on Sunday, and again indicating that it's very cold, dry air. And if we finish by looking at the ECMWF, of course the midday run has only just come out, but again it does follow in tune similar to what the other runs have been showing. The midday run, you can see cold for another couple of days, turning slightly milder actually, nowhere near as mild as the GFS operational ensemble almost went, still keeping us below average, and then another plunge of very cold air for a couple of days, and then we see a brief bump where it sort of hovers around that -4, -5 area, as we again see those milder runs appearing that could bring substantial snowfall. But similar to the GFS operational run, quite a few of those runs are staying cold, and if that happens, with precipitation moving in, again, it wouldn't be as heavy if the milder air did move in. Of course, it would be lighter being in drier, colder air. But if we did see precipitation in this sort of air mass, snowfall would be likely. I do think that we are going to see a widespread cold spell. I do think there could be substantial snowfall in the north, regardless of the pattern. Simply because even some of these milder operational runs are keeping it very cold and snowy for Scotland, hanging on to that colder air. And there is the risk, if these low pressures do play ball and stay further southwards, like a lot of ensemble members are going, a lot of operational runs have been going, then we could even see some snowfall further southwards. But the latest update has, again, continued to confuse us and keep us on edge. So it is looking incredibly interesting, definitely has ramped up from our last update, and of course I will continue to put updates out over the next few days as these models continue to resolve what is going on. But it's going to be incredibly interesting to see where we stand in even 3 days' time, considering this, as these models keep moving around. Again, they were showing slightly milder conditions in the longer term a couple of days ago. Now it's going very cold and it's staying very cold. So we will just have to see. But once again, another cold spell to end November and start December. And this one not only is going to be, again, widely very cold, but could be increasingly snowy as well with those low pressures moving in. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe and stay up to date, as of course we'll have more updates. And of course each update is going to be very different, as it is very difficult to model and forecast what is going on here. So as I said, do keep an eye on the videos, and of course Met Office warnings as well, as I suspect there will be some warnings issued next week for winteriness. And I'll see you again for another video soon.